Today we are going to talk about leprosy, an infectious disease that causes severe disfiguring, skin sores, and nerve damage in the hands and feet. According to the official reports received from 138 countries from all World Health Organization's regions, the global registered prevalence of leprosy at the end of 2015 was 176,176. That is 0.18 cases per 10,000 people. The number of new cases reported globally in 2015 was 211,973. Hansen disease, also known as leprosy, is an infection caused by bacteria called Mycobacterium leprae. It is a strongly acid-fast, gram-positive, rod-shaped organism with parallel sides and rounded ends. The bacterium have a slow doubling time of 14 days. These bacteria grow very slow, therefore it may take up to 20 years to develop signs of infections. Mycobacterium leprae is dependent on the host to provide many of the nutrients and metabolites. It is very selective when picking its host. Its ideal conditions are around 27 to 30 degrees Celsius. When the disease affects the humans, it usually in the hands and feet because they are the coolest part of the body. This environment is more suitable for Mycobacterium leprae to live and thrive. It is not known exactly how Hansen disease spreads between people, but scientists currently think that it may happen when a person with Hansen disease coughs or sneezes and the healthy person breathes in the droplets containing the bacteria. Prolonged close contact with someone with untreated leprosy over many months is needed to catch the disease.
There are 5 recognized types of leprosy. The first type, indeterminate leprosy, is considered the mildest of the 5. We then have tuberculoid leprosy, borderline leprosy, borderline leprosy, and finally, lepromatous leprosy, which is recognized as the worst form. Today, we will be discussing indeterminate leprosy, tuberculoid leprosy, and lepromatous leprosy. Indeterminate leprosy is considered the mildest and earliest display of this disease. It presents itself as a single erythematous hypopigmented spot. Usually no more than one macule identify with this form. Nerve involvement is not clinically detectable, however superficial and deep nerves are selectively connected showing inflammation in the endoneurium and perineurium. Acid-fast bacilli, or AFB, are not always detected. This form can be in an incubation period for 3 to 5 years. Patients with strong immune systems can normally clear the infection on their own or maintain this state without progression to a worsening form. Tuberculoid leprosy, or TT leprosy, can be identified with one large erythematous patch with a well-defined raised edge, or a large hypopigmented asymmetrical spot. The lesion can be described as being dry, scaly, or hairless. Tissue and nerve damage are frequent due to the infected nerves thickening and losing its function. TT leprosy is clinically detectable and can resolve on its own after a few years or progress to its worsening form if left untreated. Lepromatous leprosy presents itself with numerous lesions that are represented as plaques, macules, papules, and nodules. Early nerve involvement are typically undetected. Symptoms for lepromatous leprosy in the early stages include sinus congestion, edema of the lower extremities, and bleeding or discharge from the lesion sites. Ulceration of the lower limbs and neuropathy can take place due to infection caused by Mycobacterium leprae. If left untreated, leprosy can lead to deformity or amputation of the affected limbs, shortening of the toes and fingers secondary to reabsorption, chronic non-healing ulcers to the bottoms of the feet, and blindness. To be diagnosed with leprosy, physicians will take a sample of skin or nerve tissue via biopsy to confirm a positive presence of Mycobacterium leprae. In addition, physicians can conduct other methods of testing relevant to other forms of skin disease in order to rule them out. Leprosy is typically treated by way of 2 or 3 antibiotics. The 2 common antibiotics that are used are dapsone in conjunction with rifampin. Depending on the severity, clofazimine can be added to strengthen the effect of the treatment. The reasoning for multi-drug therapy is to prevent the bacteria from forming a resistance to the antibiotics. Treatment for this disease can last anywhere from 1 to 2 years. Unfortunately, these costly antibiotics may kill the bacteria or prevent it from worsening, but it will not reverse the damage that may have already been developed. It is important to tackle this disease with treatment in its early stages to avoid potential chronic nerve damage or disfigurement. Leprosy has a neurotrophic behavior, meaning it targets the nerves, specifically Schwann cells and macrophages. The cell wall of M. leprae contains targets of the host's immune response. Once the bacteria has invaded Schwann cells, it begins to replicate slowly for years. Phenolic glycolipid 1, or PGL1, can be found in these cell walls. PGL1 is known for its stimulation of IgM antibody response that is produced by B cells that can be decreased with therapy. The different forms of leprosy are dependent on the patient's immunological response to the bacteria. At one pole, the lesions of tuberculoid or TT leprosy patients are infiltrated with abundant Th1 interferon-secreting CD4 positive T lymphocytes containing epithelioid and multinucleate giant cells around dermal nerves. TT leprosy has an aggressive immune response, which keeps the acid-fast bacilli relatively contained. TT leprosy is characterized by a cell-mediated response and an antibody response that is weak or absent. Th1 cells are abundant in TT and borderline leprosy, but not present in lepromatous leprosy. The borderline forms of leprosy are considered clinically unstable and show a slow progression towards the lepromatous pole or have a sudden reaction reversal. At the opposing pole, lepromatous or LL leprosy is characterized by the absence of specific cellular immunity. This absence causes the uncontrolled replication of the M. leprae bacteria. Lesions of LL contain mRNA for the Th2 interleukins 4 and 10. However, in some patients, T cells' response to M. leprae are not always demonstrated, suggesting a deletion or suppression of T cell activity.
Leprosy does not affect the central nervous system, such as the brain and spinal cord, but it can affect the peripheral nervous system. When sensory nerves are damaged, the person cannot register pain. This makes the hands and feet vulnerable to burns and injuries that can result in a loss of fingers, toes, hands, and feet. When motor nerves are damaged, various forms of parallelism can occur, such as dropped foot, dropped wrist, clawed hand, and logophthomus, where the eye cannot close. And last but not least, autonomic nerve damage can cause hair loss and affect the ability to sweat, leaving the skin dry, brittle, cracked, and at risk for a secondary infection.
The prevention of leprosy ultimately lies in the early diagnosis and treatments of those individuals suspected or diagnosed as having leprosy. Another prevention is to avoid prolonged close contact with an infected person. Household contacts of patients with leprosy should be monitored closely for development of leprosy signs and symptoms.
In conclusion, the slow-growing bacteria target Schwann cells and macrophages in the peripheral nervous system, predominantly in the hands and feet. Although transmission is uncertain, this possible airborne pathogen can be mild in the form of indeterminate leprosy with a single erythematous hypopigmented spot, or can progress to its lepromatous form if left untreated, leading to neuropathy or potential amputation. Early diagnosis is critical, however, leprosy can be treated in later stages with costly multi-drug therapy. Avoid close contact with those that are infected, and should you share a household with a disease, monitor yourself for signs and symptoms.